And welcome back to the Interfaith Roundtable. I'm Cantor Perman, Farmington Valley Jewish Congregation, Emek Shalom in Simsbury. Happy to be back with you. Well, as an independent businessman and entrepreneur, Mark Greenberg has dedicated his life to improving his community. He has created and sustained many jobs over the past 30 years, providing a livelihood for local families. After graduating from Cornell University, Mark founded 2 successful companies, and in 1980, and he's founded many more than that. In 1980, he created MGRE, a firm that is now one of the largest real estate management firms in the Northeast. And most important to me, and inspired me to have him on the program, is that he and his wife, Linda, founded the Simon Foundation Incorporated, which is a wonderful animal rescue facility in Bloomfield, Connecticut. They have found homes for over 1,500 dogs and cats and continue to do wonderful work in that area. And it's my pleasure and honor to welcome Mark Greenberg, who is currently a candidate, the only announced candidate in the 5th Congressional District for the 2014 Republican, is it nomination to run for Congress?
Yeah, well, first nomination and then the election, yes.
Yes. So things didn't work out in 2012, but you're starting up again. Obviously, you must have a vision or something that's propelling you forward, rather than doing other things, to say this is my aspiration is to serve my country and to serve the community. Yeah. So why do it again?
Well, I believe that things did work out because I developed a base. I increased my name recognition. I spoke to the people about the issues that are important, as I did in 2010 as well. So this is my 3rd run for Congress, and I'm running for Congress because I believe that we have to turn this country into the way it used to be from the point of view of American exceptionalism. I have 5 young children, and I feel that they should live and grow up in a society and a country as great as the one that I grew up in. I was a product of the American dream. I started from nothing, and I was successful and happy in this country that I call America. I want that country to be great again.
Why specifically the Congress? I've always wondered why folks who have the potential to run, choose one office other than, let's say, aspiring to be governor. So why would you think that Congress would be the more effective way to go?
Well, this is my 3rd run again, and I've developed some name recognition and a base of operation, and a lot of people who want to see me in Washington doing what they believe I should do philosophically. I don't think that governor would be possible for me, frankly, because I don't have that name recognition among 5 districts. I have name recognition locally in 1 district in the 5th district. So I think that the 5th district is achievable, and I think I'll be able to do some pretty spectacular things in Washington once elected.
Having been a bit of a student of history, it always seems to me that historically the representative, the congressmen, usually congressmen, now they're congresswomen, really left their fields, left their farms, left their jobs for 2 or 4 years and went and served to really, truly represent the people. To be a representative, do you have to take a poll? For example, if you have a strong view on an issue, but 80% of the district thinks the other way, do you have a moral obligation to do what your elected constituents want or to do what you think is right?
Well, that's a great question. But first, your first point is that originally people were going to Washington for 2 years, 4 years, 6 years.
Right.
They didn't make a career out of
Right.
it. They weren't professionals.
Right.
They go back to the farms and they go back to what they were doing before. Congress has become way too professional at this point in time. It's a business. It's a career, and the perks are so great that once people are down there, they don't want to go back. Yeah. And I think that's really a problem. That's why I've called for term limits, no more than 4 terms of 2 years. And I believe that everybody who runs for Congress should determine the amount of time that they're going to be down there and then come back.
The other thing I've heard is that some people believe the term itself is too short, because if you get elected, right away you got to turn around and, if you want to run again, start thinking about your next election. So you can't really focus as much as you'd like to because it's so short. Do you hear that too?
I hear that too, and I've made the suggestion as well that 2 years is too short.
Did I see that on your website? No.
I don't think it was on my website, but I've made that statement various times.
Right.
2 years, you're right. It's a constant cycle of re-election. So the moment that you're elected, you're starting to fundraise, you're starting to talk about the next election. I think that's clearly wrong.
So it's really new. I mean, Elizabeth Este's been in office since what, January? So, I mean, let's say she does a terrific job in the next 6 months or 8 months and everybody's happy with her. What do? Do you still pursue it, or do you say, I'm saying theoretically, how do you know now that you should run until you see the record that she produces in office?
Well, I've already seen the record with Elizabeth Este, and I've heard her speeches, and I know where she stands on a lot of issues, and we're quite different. She believes, to a large extent, that the government can determine best what to do with Treasury funds, and I believe quite the opposite. I believe that we're best suited to make our own decisions, and that the government should be minimalist, and that we should rely upon ourselves as opposed to relying upon the government. So I understand her philosophy, and we are quite different.
Now, in Connecticut, of course, with what happened in Newtown tragically in December, we've sort of been at the thrust into the forefront of the whole gun control debate, and all you hear is both sides. And we had dinner the other night with some friends. It became a whole debate about gun control. What is an automatic? What's a semi-automatic? How does it's a clip? And most people, I probably don't even understand the new laws that are being written. So where do you come down on some of these
Well,
things?
I do believe in the Second Amendment. I believe that this was a right given to us by the Founding Fathers to be able to bear arms. However, I think it's very important that we keep these arms out of the wrong hands. I think that we have to make sure that these firearms do not find their way into mentally unsure people. So we have to work very hard to make that happen. This was a terrible tragedy. We have to be sensitive to these people. On the other hand, we have to be very sensitive to the fact that we were granted a Second Amendment, which gives us the right to carry arms. And we have to be careful about taking away those rights, because those are sacrosanct as well.
So what you're saying now factors in, I guess, this is more of a larger sort of philosophical show, which is, to me, you gave a sort of a moderate, centrist, common sense approach, People have a right to bear arms, but to do it legally and safely, and those who can't do it legally and safely shouldn't have it. But then if you listen to some extremists on both sides, it's either take away everybody's guns, or on the NRA side, it's everybody has a right to bear arms. We're against background checks. We're afraid of the slippery slope from one thing to the next. They're out of step with the mainstream. So are you willing to reject the extremist arguments on both sides and somehow stay in the center?
In this case, I think you have to reject the extreme argument on both the left and on the right. We have to be sensitive to the terrible loss in Newtown. We have to try to figure out a way together to keep firearms out of the wrong hands. On the other hand, we were given a right to bear arms. So I think we have to be sensitive to both those points of view. So I do not think that I have an extreme outlook on guns.
Let's talk just for a little bit as a business person. Obviously that, gives you a foundation. We'll talk about Simon Foundation in a minute, to build a congressional run. When you look at something like health insurance, and again, you have these debates among people, everybody, you want to see them have insurance. At the same time, how do small businesses afford what, say, Obamacare is requesting of people? And then what businesses do is cut back full-time employees and go to under 30 hours. So how do you, as a businessman, how have you balanced the needs of your company to be profitable and make a living and still take care of employees properly and provide insurance?
Well, first, I don't think that you can do that with Obamacare. I have been against it from day one. I think there are some aspects which we haven't thought about carefully, which are going to affect the health delivery system. I believe we have one of the greatest health delivery systems in the world. And I think that the government control, a greater government control through this Obamacare Act, is going to affect that. So we have to be very careful about it. And I don't think that health insurance is a right. I don't think it was guaranteed to us. So I'm very, very careful about making it available by way of fiat, by way of statute, for everybody, because there's a cost. Some people are going to have to subsidize and pay for those who then get on health insurance.
So you're not going to look at a Canada or an England or even Israel and say, look at the socialized medicine. A lot of people think that's the way to go. But
no, that's not my my path.
Let's talk briefly, and then we'll talk about Simon Foundation. the gridlock. Olympia Snow, a former senator from Maine, wrote a whole book, and she said, and Bob Dole was in her book about how today there's not a lot of negotiation, there's not a lot of compromise. You get an issue like Benghazi, well, you have it right down the middle. The Democrats are feeling attacked, and Republicans are going after the president, rather than a bipartisan look at what's really going on to solve the issues. So how do you see yourself as, if you do, as a compromise, not a compromise, someone who's willing to compromise and to help mediate differences and to break this ideological divide?
Well, I think that the people are very angry about the fact that they see a Congress and a Senate and a president that can't get things done. Dysfunction, absolute dysfunction. Every day we have to balance our budget. Yet the Senate hasn't balanced the budget or voted on a budget for 2.5, 3 years. We have to have a balanced budget, but the U.S. government has a budget which is $1 trillion in the red.
So what would you do? What would your steps be?
You do have to seek compromise in some way, shape, and form. You absolutely have to make something happen. I'll give you a perfect example. Social Security. This is an issue where both Democrats and Republicans know that if we don't do something about making the system more solvent, that it's going to go broke. We all know that we have to raise the age of retirement. Everybody knows it. But we can't get together to do it. This just emphasizes the dysfunction down there. I've called for increasing the age of retirement to 70 over the last 4 years.
There's an argument that people who use a lot of their own money can sort of control the race because they have all this money. Then there's another argument that people who have resources to do it themselves can be more independent, to whereas somebody like you or a Bloomberg who's using more of their own resource, you're not beholden to any special interests. I don't know. I mean, I don't think so. And you can speak your mind. Does that give you more liberty than somebody who's...
Well, I believe it does. I believe it does. To a large extent, for the last 2 races, I was funding a good percentage of those races on my own, 75 to 80%. Going forward, though, I want to be able to raise money, small amounts, from many people in the district who believe in what I believe in, so that I could bring their point of view as well to Washington. But back to your point, I'm beholden to nobody. I want to be in Washington to do the right thing for my 5 children, their generation, for America in general. And I'll stay there 4, 6, 8 years maximum and then get back home. But I'll be beholden to absolutely nobody.
Does your wife ever say to you, what are you spending all our money for on this? What is this, your hobby?
No.
What about fixing the house?
No, what she says is, why are you spending all the time doing this? The money is not the issue with her. She's a great woman and she's supportive of me. She believes as well that I should give back to this country, give back to our children, their generation, and America in the future.
And so you have 5 kids. What ages are your 5 kids?
11, 8, 6, 4, and a newborn.
Oh, mazel tov.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So let's talk a bit about the Simon Foundation, which is, briefly a wonderful rescue facility in Connecticut. I was personally helped by it with a dog that I brought there to try to get adopted. And what was the origin? Tell us a bit about the history, your love for animals. And, so many people complain about all these unwanted dogs that get put down, especially in the South. Coming from Atlanta is horrible. But you put your money where your mouth is and did something about it. Why?
Well, 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, there was a dog running, a German Shepherd running from Queens to the Bronx on the Triborough Bridge.
Was this like a race?
No, this dog was just abandoned.
Abandoned.
Abandoned. It was free, and it was running on, the bridge. So I stopped my car, I opened up the door, and I said, you want to come in? You have a home. If you don't want to, I won't force you in. So I waited on the bridge for at least a minute. Finally, she decided to come in the car, and I named her Triborough, and I kept her for 15 years until she passed.
Yeah. Wow.
And I've always felt for animals who are innocent and didn't ask to be abandoned, didn't ask to be born, and we have that similar love. So what we did is about 10 years ago, we started taking animals from the Hartford shelter, from other shelters, which were kill facilities. I get these emails that this particular dog is going to be killed, put down, if you don't come in a day or 2 days.
Sure.
So we started taking dogs. And it just mushroomed. It mushroomed to the point where we had to buy a commercial kennel and keep some of the dogs there, and then we decided to build the Simon Foundation.
Why do you call it Simon? Who was Simon?
Simon was a dog.
Oh,
So it's named
Okay.
after a dog that passed away. And
it was like Paul Simon.
yeah.
You know.
So it culminated in opening up the major facility in Bloomfield, Connecticut, called the Simon Foundation on Rescue Lane.
Yeah.
And it's a 35,000 square foot facility on 22 acres. We have capacity for 140 dogs, 75 cats. We have a training facility. We have a staff trainer who deals with
Yes.
possible issues of aggression or
Joanne,
things
she's
of
great.
that nature.
Yeah.
Joanne, yeah.
Yep.
And we adopt over 500 cats and dogs every year at this point in time.
So you can really, I guess, as a candidate, point to a serious problem and say, look, I didn't just talk about this. I didn't just make speeches. I didn't just write about it. I did something about it. And I did it at a time when I wasn't running for office, so it had no political implications. It was just what I felt in my heart. So, how do you incorporate that into your identity as a political leader?
Well, it's very hard to. Some people have told me you always have to have a dog in your TV commercials. You always have to walk a dog. You have to always talk about
Can't
Simon.
exploit it. Yeah.
The problem I have with that is I was brought up to not emphasize sometimes things that I do, which are positive.
Right.
I try to be modest. My parents have always said, don't talk about yourself.
Right.
Well, when you're running for office, you have to talk about yourself to a certain extent, but I find it somewhat difficult to interweave the Simon Foundation with the campaign. If people ask me about it, I'm absolutely sure to talk about it. But this is a love that I've had, and I don't expect any credit for it. I didn't do it for the credit. I do it for the animals
Right.
who are innocent and who would otherwise be killed.
Yeah.
And that's the motivation behind it. Every day I wake up, I'm saving another animal, and I feel
Yeah.
great about that.
It's not only that, but it's the whole spaying and neutering thing. I mean, the whole mentality that goes in of people, I don't want to be too critical, but people who look to breed and have certain pedigreed animals, when animals are languishing in shelters and need to be adopted, and I just philosophically have a problem with that,
Well, we've reserved 3,000 square feet of our shelter at the Simon Foundation for a veterinary clinic. And one of the functions of that veterinary clinic will be for spay and neuter, low-cost spay and neuter. Because if you can avoid these animals from being born, then you can avoid euthanasia to a certain extent, obviously, and reduce it.
Right.
Yeah.
This is called the Interfaith Roundtable, so we talk about religious identity sometime. Are you comfortable talking about how being Jewish informs your positions as a candidate or your vision for? Is that something that you feel strong about, or Israel?
I feel fine about it. I'm very, very strong on Israel. I think that the country of Israel is a beacon in the Middle East, considering that Israel was created 1947, how far it's come from that point of view. We should all aspire to create what has happened in Israel in such a quick timetable. Israel was virtually a desert 70 years ago.
But yet, as a congressman, you'll be responsible for people of all different faiths. Who that question always comes up, and it came up of John Kennedy in 1960. Will you take your orders from the Pope? Because you're Catholic, you're Jewish, will you put Israel first? What about the interests of Syrians or moderate Muslims in your community? So how do you speak to that? I've always had a problem with this whole identity politics thing where I should vote for somebody because they are like me. Or that, I know, I don't want them to vote for that reason. I want them to vote because they believe in what I have to say. So do you believe that?
Well, I hope that people will vote for me based upon their belief that I'll do an honest job, and I will be faithful to my philosophy, which I'm running on. And getting back to your question 20 minutes ago, I think most people will want to vote for me because I'll do what's right, what I think is right for the people of the 5th District and right for this country.
How do you represent people who differ from you philosophically? If somebody wants to twist things around, they can say, well, why did he give so much money to an animal place? What's he doing for human beings? I mean, that could come up. How would you take that kind of criticism?
It has come up.
Oh, it has?
Sure. People have asked me, why do you give so much to animals? And Truth is, I have given to animals and people over
Right.
my 35 years where I've been in the position of giving. But I hope that I'll be a sounding board for all types of opinions, and I will have an open door to listen to all points of view. And I'll try to use my best God-given ability to make a decision based upon the input from all those people.
So as you look into the future and, say it didn't work out as far as Congress, do you see yourself doing more of this kind of awareness work across the country? I mean, I have a link on Facebook to a rescue facility in Israel. There's one in Turkey. I mean, people don't realize when you walk down the streets of Jerusalem, there are about 28 cats that jump out of garbage cans.
Yeah.
Somebody brought, I'm not sure the history, but brought cats to Israel when it really was not indigenous. So all of a sudden, if someone turned a cat out, there's a billion cats there, and they don't really know what to do with them. So, at what point do these problems start to take on, international? And I guess in the Congress, you're not only serving the local district, but you do have this international connection because you're part of the U.S. federal government. So do you start to think beyond the local to that problem, to a more global, of how we treat human beings and animals?
Well, sure, but I always believe that you have to in life take one step at a time, and I try not to project myself too far on the future.
Yeah.
You really learn that when you have 5 children at home, which are under the age of 11. Wow. So right now, my main focus is the Simon Foundation, running for Congress, trying to get elected, and once elected, I'll do the right thing for the people of the 5th District, people of Connecticut, and people of this country. Take it one day at a time with a sound philosophical underpinning.
Now, Mitt Romney tried to run, let's say, again, the presidential election on his business expertise and his business experience and so forth. And on one level, it seemed to resonate. On another level, it didn't, because I think people picked up inconsistencies between who he was as governor and who he was running for. He couldn't seem to find himself identity-wise. Do you feel you have at least that's my sense, do you have a clear, coherent sense of who you are, who you've been? So if somebody looks back to your record 15 years ago and says, oh yeah, we can see this progression. He hasn't been one way then and one way now. He's consistent.
Well,
people grow and change.
I don't think that they'll find an inconsistency in what I've said, what I've believed.
How is running a company like running for Congress? How is being business? What are the parallels?
Well, it happens to be quite different. It happens to be quite different. The political arena is something so different from the business arena. I found in the past that in the business arena, you shake a hand on a contract and it's a real contract. But sometimes in politics, that's not the case.
Right.
So I've sometimes learned the hard way over the last 4 years, but I think that I've gotten better in the political arena, and I think that this particular run for Congress will be successful.
One thing I'm impressed with is that, you don't have a whole group of 5 or 6 quote-unquote handlers kind of telling you what. It's just Bill over there is running the camera for us, doing a great job, and he doesn't seem that pushy that way. So it's sort of just, you, without needing to hire a billion people to say, well, how, I need to go to this group. How should I come across there? Well, I'm going to them, the Saudi group. How do I come across pro-Saudi? I mean, that to me always seems very manipulative. So do you?
Well, we had more of that last time. And this
Yeah.
time around, we have less of it.
Right.
If I can't get to Washington to do what I believe myself, philosophically, then I don't want to get to Washington. So I don't need handlers to tell me what to think. I can think on my own.
Right.
Well, with terms of Bill running the camera, maybe I'll deduct today's
Yeah,
pay
you should.
from his campaign. He's doing a great job there.
If folks want to support the efforts of Simon Foundation, I want to give you an opportunity to say, how can they help? I mean, I don't have a lot of money to give, so I walk dogs there on Wednesday and Thursday. People ask, like, how can we help? Well, they can go over there and walk the dogs.
Well, yes. As a matter of fact, they can go to the website, which is www.thesimonfoundation.org, and they can fill out an application to be a paid employee, volunteer, or, of course, fill out an application for a dog or cat. Now, there's a lot of love out there in terms of people who want to volunteer. We'll sometimes get 25, 30 applications for volunteering every week.
Wow.
And as you probably know, we have quite a number of volunteers. People are dedicated to give back to these animals. So that's very, very satisfying.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to tell you what you were saying. I have a few minutes left, but there was a show last night about this financier of the railroad. His name was Henry Gould, years and years ago. Remember that name?
Yes.
And he was very successful, but he developed somehow, because, I don't know, maybe because he was Jewish, but a bad reputation which followed him because people equated being a businessman with somehow, I don't know, that he was exploiting his workers. They gave him an unfair reputation. So how do you deal with the media? How do you deal with a story about you that you know is either semi-accurate or totally inaccurate? And if you start to complain about it, you look like, what do you do about that? You know, see stuff in print.
Well, with regard to the media, you have to have an attitude where you're just going to move to the next day and forget about it. You can't let it affect you.
You don't try to rebut everything in the
press? No. You just try to be consistent to your own philosophy, and if you have somebody say something badly about you, you just move on.
Do you find a need out there to sort of tear down, to look for the scandal, to look for the negatives as opposed to, well, how about all the good this person's done? And if they've made some mistakes, well, guess what? They're human, and so am I. So people who are not perfect, I don't know where they are, don't run because they're so afraid that, you know, they cheated on a college test or something happened when they were 30, and if that comes out, so they don't run. So what kind of a society
Well, the
is that?
problem is very bad, and that's why we have professional politicians, career politicians, because people of talent tend not to run for public office because it's bruising it sometimes.
Yeah.
And we lose that talent because of it. But I've decided that I'm going to do it in any case. I'll take the criticisms, I'll take the debates, and I have a clean life, and so I'm not afraid to do this.
Okay, so in the moments we have left, I think we're coming up to a minute, right, Clay? We're coming up to a minute. So, okay, just, you know, your time. Just tell folks what you believe and what you stand for. And
I stand for dogs and cats, that they should be saved whenever
they don't
possible.
vote.
They don't vote, but that's okay. That's okay. But there's a lot of population out there who love the dogs and the cats who do vote.
Right.
And I also stand for American exceptionalism. I'm running for Congress in 2014 because I believe in a great America. I believe that in Washington, I would do things to bring about a great America again and to change this dysfunction of Congress where nothing can get done and bring about some good leadership to change that.
Thank you very much, Mark Greenberg. I'm Cantor Mark Perman, Farmington Valley Jewish Congregation, Emek Shalom. If you'd like to throw any questions out that I could send over to Mark and read back the answers next month, it's mjperman9@gmail.com, mjperman9@gmail.com. Thanking Bill, Althea, Clay, Phyllis, Jason, Karen, the whole staff. And thank you, Mark. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
See you next time.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.